Hear my thoughts on all the things that took place at Super Bowl LVIII over this week on JG9 News. New content dropping every single day on that channel. And now, on with our feature presentation. During the 2021 divisional round, the Buffalo Bills played the Kansas City Chiefs in one of the greatest playoff games of all time. However, despite the incredible game, it featured its fair share of controversy for how it ended. With the score tied at 36-all, the game went into overtime, and under the overtime rules at the time, a touchdown ended the game without the other team having a chance to answer. This felt like one of those games, based on the way both offenses were playing, where the winner of the coin toss was going to win the game and prevent the other team from touching the ball again. Sure enough, that's exactly what happened, as when Kansas City won the toss, they drove right down the field, with Travis Kelce scoring the game-winning walk-off touchdown to give the Chiefs a thrilling 42-36 win. However, the fact that the game ended like that, with Bills quarterback Josh Allen and company never touching the ball again, felt, shall we say, anticlimactic and a bit unfair in the eyes of some. In lieu of that game, the rules were changed beginning in the 2022 season for overtime in the playoffs, where now, both teams, barring a safety, were guaranteed to get at least one possession in the OT period. Before, it was blatantly obvious. If you won the toss, you absolutely received the ball so you can end the game with a touchdown. But now, there was a heck of a lot more strategy involved, knowing that even if you go down the field and score, the other team gets a chance to respond. If you receive and score a touchdown, the other team knows exactly what they have to do. They have an extra down to do it, and on top of that, they can go for 2 points in the win, and are able to run a play that has a better than 50% chance of working. If you receive and don't score, at that point, it becomes sudden death. However, if you receive and kick a field goal, and the other team can only get 3 points on their drive, you have the upper hand and get the ball third in what would be a sudden death period. There's a lot more nuance to the decision if you win the coin toss regarding what to do under these rules. And we hadn't seen an overtime period played in the postseason since the implementation of these rules. That is, until now. Because at Super Bowl LVIII, in the most watched television event of all time in the United States, in what felt like the series finale to the NFL, that's exactly what happened. You know the situation by now. The game was tied at 19 apiece going into overtime. The San Francisco 49ers won the coin toss, and they decided that they wanted the ball first and were going to receive. They go down the field and get a field goal. The Chiefs know exactly what they need to do, and sure enough, they march down the field, with future Hall of Fame quarterback Patrick Mahomes engineering a methodical drive to get the Chiefs into the red zone, where they would eventually score the walk-off touchdown on a pass by Mahomes to Mecole Hardman. San Francisco chose to start the overtime period with the ball first, and it backfired tremendously. And after the game, oh man, there was a ton of backlash and controversy and criticism surrounding Kyle Shanahan's decision, especially in light of the fact that this was now his third appearance in the Super Bowl, one as an offensive coordinator with the Atlanta Falcons, and two as the head coach of the 49ers. And in all three of them, he choked away a double-digit lead and choked away a late-game lead. This was one of the most controversial coaching decisions in Super Bowl history, and quite frankly, NFL history. This is up there for one of the top 5 why did the coach do that decisions in the history of the big game. You've got why did the Colts not bench Earl Morrall sooner at Super Bowl III for Johnny Unitas. You've got why did the Packers let the Broncos score a touchdown intentionally at Super Bowl 32. You've got why did the Falcons not run the ball of 28-20 in field goal range at Super Bowl 51. You've got why did the Patriots bench Malcolm Butler at Super Bowl 52. And of course, you've got the most talked about decision of all time. Why did the Seahawks not give it to Marshawn Lynch down by the goal line at Super Bowl 49? And I wanted to wait until the dust was settled to do a video on this, simply because I wanted to hear what this man right here, Kyle Shanahan, had to say in terms of defending his decision. And no, it obviously did not look good knowing that the outcome of the game turned out the way that it did. And also knowing that some players on the 49ers had no idea what the overtime rules were. Defensive lineman Eric Armstead only learned what the rules were for the OT period when they showed it on the stadium jumbotron, and fullback Kyle Juszczyk thought that a touchdown won the game, and that's why the 49ers received. Then again, I don't put this on Shanahan so much, considering the fact that on the other side with Andy Reid, number one, Hardman had no idea that his touchdown won the game, and number two, most infamously, he had a quarterback in Donovan McNabb during his time with the Philadelphia Eagles, who, after a game against the Cincinnati Bengals in 2008, had no idea that games could actually end in a tie. So blaming Shanahan for that doesn't seem to make a ton of sense, seeing as many players are inherently oblivious when it comes to the rules and know nothing about the sport that they're playing. Heck, I did a video on a 1989 game where the Minnesota Vikings defeated the Los Angeles Rams on a safety, and the player who scored the safety had no idea that he just won the game for them, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. So the lack of knowledge by the players will not factor into any determination here, because that seems to be a tale as old as time no matter how good the coach in question is. Having said that, this feels like this is what this series of In Defense Of was made for. Moments like this. No, it did not work out. I think that goes without saying. Yes, with the benefit of hindsight, taking the ball first was absolutely not the right move. But I had no problem with the decision that Kyle Shanahan made, because quite frankly, I would have done the same thing. And we're going to break down the two reasons in particular why I had no problem with Shanahan's decision in the OT period. Because this is in defense of Kyle Shanahan's decision to take the ball first in that overtime period in what will go down as the most controversial coin flip in NFL history. Like I said, there are two reasons why I had no problem with the decision and would have done the exact same thing. If you don't score and the Chiefs do, the game is over regardless. So the only way this really backfires on you is if you get a field goal and you allow a touchdown, or if you score a touchdown and then allow a touchdown where the Chiefs go for two, which is what they say they would have done. Basically, as long as the Chiefs don't score a touchdown, your strategy seems to be the right one. Well, over the course of the contest in regulation, the Chiefs had the ball 12 times. Want to know how many times they scored a touchdown? One time. That's it. 1 out of 12 times, or 8%. This is not like the Chiefs-Bills divisional round game from 2021. This is not like last year's Super Bowl between the Chiefs and the Eagles, where the Chiefs were scoring touchdown after touchdown, ending the game scoring 3 touchdowns in a row, and would have gotten a fourth if they weren't just lining up for the game-winning field goal. The Chiefs, in this game, were not finding the end zone. And heck, the one time they did find the end zone, it was on a fluke play on a muff punt because the ball just so happened to go off the gunner's leg by accident. And that came after getting a 3 and out. Long story short, the Chiefs had not driven down the field for 6 the entire game, and dating back to the second quarter of the game against the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC Championship, this was an offense that was struggling to find the end zone. Here's a look at Kansas City's last 21 drives prior to the overtime period. You can see the breakdown in this pie chart of how many times they got no points, how many times they got 3 points, and how many times they found the end zone. See that sliver that's the absolute smallest of the bunch? Yeah, that's the sliver representing the number of touchdowns they scored. And again, that came off of a short field on a muff punt, which would not happen in overtime since the Chiefs would not punt the ball away if you're trusting your offense to go down the field and score. When you break it down like that, can you really blame the 49ers for thinking that they would not allow the Chiefs to find the end zone? And at worst, would hold them to 3? And in that case, it becomes sudden death, and they get the ball third and have the upper hand that way? Shanahan even said as much afterwards, and it makes perfect sense. As he said, it's just something we talked about. None of us have a ton of experience with it. But we went through all the analytics and talked to those guys. We just thought it would be better. We wanted the ball third. If both teams matched and scored, we wanted to be the ones who had the chance to go win. We got that field goal, so we knew we had to hold them to at least a field goal, and if we did, we thought it was in our hands after that. Yep, makes perfect sense to me, especially when Shanahan elaborated after that. And he said, I think the type of game it was did match what they felt was the best way to do. It did seem more like a field goal game. But look, it's tough to stop Patrick Mahomes. He might be the most clutch quarterback we've ever seen. Give him the ball late, and he's going to make magic happen. Either way, Mahomes is touching the ball again. So let me ask you this. Which is easier to stop? Patrick Mahomes when you've got a well-rested defense, or Patrick Mahomes when you've got a completely gassed defense? It's almost like in tennis. Would you rather play John Isner coming off of a 3-set match? Or would you rather play John Isner coming off of the match against Mahmoud, where the final set was 70-68, and he was on the court for over 12 hours? And that takes me to the second point of why I had no problem with this decision. San Francisco's defense, based on what history showed during the game, might not have allowed a touchdown to Patrick Mahomes. But their odds of allowing one were significantly worse if you sent them right back on the field to start off overtime. Because regulation ended with the Chiefs marching on an 11-play drive. I don't count the Brock Purdy kneel down at the end. So you're telling me that if you decide to defer, you have to send your defense back on the field right after they were just out there for 11 plays, giving them no time to rest or recover? That seems like malpractice, if anything, especially with the amount of injuries the defense suffered over the course of the game. You can't afford to lose any more bodies as it is. On top of that, if you send the defense back on the field, even if you do somehow force a 3-and-out, Tommy Townsend was having a masterclass of a game for the Chiefs at punter. It was the complete opposite of his atrocious Super Bowl performance 3 years ago at Super Bowl 55 against the Buccaneers, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. He punted his butt off in this game. Let's say you force a 3-and-out. Townsend was averaging 51 yards per punt on the day, and he had a long of 62. He punts this ball his average, so let's say 51 yards, and in all likelihood, you're taking over inside your own 20, versus starting the drive at the 25-yard line if you started with the ball due to a touchback, which means you have a longer distance to go to get into field goal range for Jake Moody. And if you can't do it, by that point, it's sudden death. And you've got to stop Mahomes again and send that gas defense back on the field. It just wouldn't make sense to kick the ball and defer under those circumstances. It just wouldn't. General Manager John Lynch defended his coach by saying as much, saying, "I think it was an 11-play drive that we just closed the game with. And when you're playing Patrick Mahomes, you're chasing him a lot. So there's a lot of effort that's expended. I think the context from there is that you need some time to get fresh. And so all those things play into it. And those were sound decisions. And yeah, I completely agree. If you receive, you at least give yourself a chance to stop Mahomes and stop the Chiefs from getting into the end zone like you've basically done all game, because your defense is more rested. If you defer, you give yourself no chance to stop him, because you'll have guys going up against one of the greatest of all time at half speed." Now look, I want to make something very clear. Am I saying that Kyle Shanahan coached a good game? Absolutely not. There's a lot of stuff that I really disagreed with him on. I thought, for one, that his decision at the end of the first half to not take his timeouts and try and steal an extra possession from the Chiefs, I thought that made no sense whatsoever. There were random parts during the game where he didn't use Christian McCaffrey, and I didn't understand that at all. And then, of course, there's the 3rd and 4th, the very end of regulation. I think you could just run the ball there. Potentially, the Chiefs never touch it again if you pick up the requisite yardage or you bring up a 4th and short situation. But to do this, to take the ball first in the OT period, yeah, I had no problem with that whatsoever. Now, again, I'm not saying that you always take the ball first. Context and circumstance matter. But in this situation, yeah, I had no problem with what Shanahan did. No problem whatsoever. Look, this is one of those decisions that is going to be talked about for years and years to come. And there's no right answer. Anytime you make a controversial decision in the Super Bowl that plays a part in you losing the game, especially when you've got that reputation already as a man who chokes in big spots, you're going to get a ton of heat, and understandably so. And don't get me wrong, there is a lot to criticize Shanahan for when it came to this game. Trust me, there is a lot. He did not coach a great game. But this decision to take the ball, give his defense a breather, and trust his defense to stop the Chiefs from scoring a touchdown when they've only scored one in their last 21 drives, and that came off of a punt that went off a guy's legs, the opportunity to give your defense a breather after they were just on the field for 11 straight plays, the opportunity to get the ball third and win it in sudden death, yeah, I'm giving him a pass for that one. Because when you break it down, this is definitely a decision you can make a defense for. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.